We've survived a challenging time out in the jungle about a year and a half ago. And since then, your life has increasingly gotten more intense. So you've achieved the incredible feat of saving now more than 130,000 acres of rainforest. And the goal that you're working towards is protecting 200,000 acres more.
Yeah.
And doing so while facing extreme danger from narco traffickers, so-called cocaine mafia, in an escalating drug war. This is insane. These are new developments. Illegal loggers, as we've talked about before, gold miners, and the incredible recent encounter with an uncontacted tribe. And we'll talk about all of this. So your new book, Jungle Keeper, opens with the killing of 2 loggers by the warriors of an uncontacted tribe, the Mashkapiro, in August 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And then you reveal that you had your own dramatic encounter with the tribe 2 months later in October 2024. So if I may, let me read the opening of the book. Far out on the western edge of the Amazon rainforest, deep in the Peruvian jungle, a pair of loggers plunged their chainsaws into the buttressed roots of an ancient ironwood. An ironwood, or Chihuahuaco, of this size is a giant among giants, an emergent sentinel that reaches heights of 160 feet, towering over the rest of the canopy. I've read that many are over 1,000 years old, by the way, as an aside, and you've found ones that are 1,200 years old.
Incredibly old.
Anyway, you continue. This particular tree had started its life as a tiny sapling in the great jungle, a story that began before the Spanish reached Peru, long before the United States was even a dream, at a time when Leonardo da Vinci was still honing his talents in a faraway part of the world. Through the Renaissance, the First and Second World Wars, and the birth of our grandparents. This tree was out there slowly charging upward, anonymous, just one pillar among the billions of others. But on this day, in August 2024, when the 2 loggers worked, this witness of the centuries came crashing down through the canopy with such cataclysmic power that it shook the earth. And then you go on to talk about how the shaking of the earth was felt and heard by the uncontacted tribe. So you go on to describe how these particular loggers were murdered by the uncontacted tribe of Mashkapiro. What do we know about these warriors of the uncontacted tribe?
We know that across the Amazon basin, there's still perhaps thousands of clans of quote-unquote uncontacted peoples, people that are living in nomadic isolation in what remains of the intact Amazon basin and want to remain that way. And so what happened with these loggers was that local people told them, don't go out there. Don't go into these territories. And what happens is that people that aren't from this thing with the jungle, people don't believe that it's as wild as the legends say. And so when they say there's calatos out there, there's wild people out there, these loggers from another region go, yeah, this, some story, we're fine, we'll go. We have shotguns. They don't realize you're dealing with a civilization of people that is still nomadic, still uses bamboo-tipped arrows, still lives naked in the Amazon rainforest, has knowledge of medicines that we have yet to encounter or may never discover, and that they can hit a spider monkey out of the treetops at 40 meters. And so while you're using a chainsaw, they can sneak up and you will never know they're there. And so when that arrow passes through your body, you'll only have a moment to realize it before you fall over.
And we're looking at something you posted on your Instagram,
Yes,
which are the arrows that they use, which are bigger than you. So they're like 6-7 feet.
7 feet, more like 7 feet. And
Look how
that's
sharp
incredibly sharp. They cure it over the fire, and they have a way of sharpening it. That edge of bamboo becomes incredibly like knife sharp. You can cut meat with it easily. I've done it. These arrows, look at that. I mean, I'm 5'9". That's easily a 7-foot arrow.
Yeah, so for people who are just listening, this quote-unquote arrow is really a spear. Some people would think of it as a spear, but they're shooting this thing with a gigantic bow. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so to be holding that, look at that. They even twist the fletching so that the arrow spins in the air. They have incredible craftsmanship, and then you see all the little string on there is plant fibers that they've woven, and then this is them.
Yeah, the warriors of the tribe.
The warriors of the tribe. And so the fact that we're sitting here talking on microphones and that we have airplanes and cell phones and all the things that we have in the modern world, and we still live in this age where there's right now at this moment people living out in the jungle who have been there since before history, is an incredible thing.
Let me look this up on Perplexity. What are the technologies we modern humans have that the Mashkapiro do not? It's just interesting to think about the kind of technologies we take for granted. Energy and power, obviously, all the electricity generation and grids and batteries and solar panels and electric motors, metals and materials, mass-produced steel, aluminum, advanced alloys, plastics, composites, glass, concrete, all of those things.
All
Tools,
those things.
of course, and the machinery, the infrastructure of roads and bridges and buildings, and the weapons of war, everything but the spears and arrows that they have, and the medicine and biology. Of course, they probably have complicated medicines that they have developed for their own that are available within the jungle.
I mean, that entire list is no.
No.
I mean, metal, think you have to be able to excavate into the earth and forge metal. These people don't even, as one of the local anthropologists said to me, a Peruvian anthropologist, he said, people think of them as Stone Age tribes. And he was like, they don't have stones. He's like, they don't know that water, they see water that they drink. They don't know that water freezes because they've never seen it. They don't know that water boils because they don't even make clay pots. They just have their bamboo and their string. And so they're living an incredibly simple life. So all of that, I mean, even, a camera is a miracle to them. Like, it's like, yeah, you have to bend your mind to even understand how far back they are. It's like looking into thousands of years ago, like Stone Age.
Well, they hear the sounds of the chainsaws, the sounds of machinery in the distance.
Yeah.
I wonder how they can possibly comprehend what that is.
I think they view it as like a demonic, destructive force. And when I show you the encounter that we had, we got a few takeaways. We left with more questions than answers, but one of the things that they were able to communicate across the language barrier was, why are you cutting down the trees? They don't like it.
Yeah, that represents to them the danger that the outside world brings, the destruction that the outside world brings.
They see us as the destroyers of worlds.
So tell me about this encounter in October of 2024.
So in order to tell you about that encounter, I think we need to orient people into where we're talking about. We're talking about this river that runs through the western edge of the Amazon rainforest that you know well now, after spending time there with me. It's a high tributary of the Amazon rainforest where, you have the main river channel and then smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller tributaries. And the smaller you get, the less trafficked they are. And so this river has remained wild through the centuries. And even during the 90s, when there was a mahogany boom where people went out for mahogany trees, there's very few people going up this river. And so 20 years ago, when I first got to the region and people were telling me that there's uncontacted tribes out there, it was always in the realm of something, it's like people say there's Bigfoot, or don't go there, it's haunted, or something. It's like, it was like a tall tale almost. And even the Peruvian government at the time that I went to Peru first, which was 2006, their official position was that the tribes are a myth. There's no such thing as the tribes. That was the official position. And you would hear these stories of people that got shot. You'd meet someone high up a river, 4 days upriver deep in the Amazon, that had an arrow. And you'd look at this thing and it had this, mega gravity. And so as we've created Jungle Keepers and now we're protecting 130,000 acres of this river, we're protecting the plants and the animals and the ancient trees and trying to preserve the ecosystem and counting the butterflies and conducting ecological surveys. And what we've inadvertently found ourselves the caretakers of is the fact that these people, in order to continue living, have to remain isolated, want to remain isolated. That's their one mandate as a civilization, the tribes of the Mashkapiro. And so in October, we were, as Jungle Keepers now, we're working with the indigenous people. What we do is we take loggers and gold miners and make them into rangers and give them better jobs, and we try to protect the forest. And those people who live up in the remote indigenous community. They called us on a satellite phone and they said, directors, you've been working with us and telling us you want to help us. The tribes are coming out. What do we do?
So even they don't really know when the tribes emerge from the deep jungle what to do.
They were terrified.
What was your thinking when you got the phone call?
When we got the phone call, it was a mix of, we should keep, because we're over here like trying to get land concessions and doing all this important work. And part of me was like, that can't be real. So we're going to keep our heads down.
Bigfoot is emerging from the forest.
Like, yeah, sure. And then, because we got the call, we hung up and we said, okay, maybe tomorrow if they're like still there or something. And then it was crazy because it was probably about noon. And we had an important day of meetings. We had a meeting with the police. We had a meeting with the landowner. We were trying to do all this stuff for the conservation work. And then I got together with the core team of directors, JJ, Mos, and Stefan, and we said, wait, if this is real, we have to get there like now. And so we dropped what we were doing, canceled the meetings. We put other people on the meetings. We got a boat. We called Ignacio. We called our most hardcore ranger.
Who has been shot.
Who in 2019 was shot in the head by an arrow and still bears the scar. And he barely survived. And we said, look, this is going down. He said, I already know because the whole river already knows. And we said, can you get us there by tomorrow morning? And he said, look, it's a 2-day journey by boat. So no. And we said, is there any way you can get us there? And he went, I'll get you there. And so we got a couple sacks of rice, a couple cans of tuna, our dry bags, our tents. We got on a boat by 6 p.m. and we started riding up the river.
Through the night.
And so a 2-day boat journey that we're trying to flex in one night. And so I was at the front with the headlamp, with the torch. And so the first few hours, it was clear. And that comet, remember that comet that was going? There was that comet in the sky. I remember looking at the comet and going, somehow I was like, this is it. I knew this was it. And the first few hours was clear and the stars was out and it was beautiful. And then it clouded over and the lightning started and then it just apocalypse downpoured. And from midnight until 8 a.m., it was just the front of the boat with the light. And it was just Star Wars vision of just, raindrops and galaxies and moths flying in my eye. And people don't realize you can get hypothermia in the tropics, but it's like as you're going at night, even if it's 80 degrees outside, in the rain, in the wind at night, in a lightning storm, you're freezing. Yeah. And so by, 2 a.m., I'm convulsively shivering, and we're using the crocodile eyes, the caiman eyes on the side of the river because it was so dark we couldn't see where we were going. So those shine back at you. So I was finding the caiman eyes and then motioning with the light to Ignacio where to go, and he knew how to find the channel. We had to jump the waterfalls. We did the 2-day boat ride in one night.
Nice.
And we got there, and we arrived at this community and it's morning now, and the howler monkeys are calling over the jungle, and the little naked children are all by the side and everyone's scared. And we get a hug from this guy, Bacho, who we know. And they're like, come in. And they're like, the tribe came out yesterday, that we saw a few of them on the beach and they're gone now. And so we collapsed. We fell asleep. Rained the whole day. That night we went out and we looked for them. And there was this crazy moment where we're standing on this beach and their footprints were there. And the local indigenous anthropologist was standing there, and we're standing at the edge of this beach looking out into the Amazon beyond. And there's just all this wreckage. It looked like something very Cormac McCarthy, just dark sky, iron clouds. And we're standing there. Everyone is waiting because at any moment an arrow could just fly through your neck. And there's people holding shotguns. And the anthropologist, this little guy, is standing there in the front, and he's going, no mole. He's going, brothers. There's only a few words that intersect between the languages, and he's going, brothers, we're here. We don't want to hurt you. He's speaking in the Yine language. And he's saying, come out. And you can tell by their footprints, the trackers explained this to us, that you could see it was just the balls of their feet. So right as we pulled up to the beach, they had run. So they were there listening to us. And he's going, no mole, come out. It's okay. Lay down your arms. We'll lay down ours. No mole. Just kept saying no mole. And nothing happened. And we went back to the village. We went to sleep. We wake up the next morning and it's 5 a.m. And again, we're trying to save the jungle. We're in a race against time to get these land concessions. And so my team, like Mos and Stefan, JJ couldn't come because he was in town actually signing paperwork and interviewing loggers and landowners. And also he didn't think that there was any chance this was going to be real because in his entire 50-something years in the Amazon, he's never seen them. And so we're getting ready to leave in the morning. We had tents on the boat, and Ignacio comes up to me and he goes, "You're my director, right? You're my boss?" And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "I need to talk to you like a friend." I said, "Yeah, shoot, go." And he goes, "You'd be an idiot to leave right now." He goes, "They're coming." And so he convinced us to stay. We pull our tents off the boat. Stefan and Mosin go off with their cameras. They start shooting, people. These are monkey eaters and fishermen, the community that we're in. And everything's quiet. And I opened my laptop and I was working, just writing my book. And then it happened. Then you start hearing people screaming, "Mashko, Mashko," and people are screaming, and women are lifting children and running into the huts, and the dogs and chickens are going nuts. And
So fear. Because we should say kind of the obvious thing is, as far as anyone remembers, any encounters, any minimal small encounters with these tribes have been violent.
Extremely violent. These tribes have remained alive because of their violence, almost like the Spartans or the Comanches. They seem to have adopted violence as a first response to contact.
Maybe you can correct me on this, but I read that in the late 19th century, early 20th century, there was documentation of encounters with these tribes by the private armies of the robber barons.
Mm-hmm.
And those encounters were, from the robber barons' armies' perspective, violent.
Yeah.
And so maybe the lesson they learned, the uncontacted tribes, is that any interaction with the outside world is going to have to be violent because they have to defend themselves.
Yeah. You had colonial missionaries in the 1700s. Then you had the rubber barons, the late 1800s into the 1900s, just periods of extraction and domination and cruelty. And these tribes, their grandparents must have told them, when the outside world comes, you shoot first. That's the only thing that's going to keep you alive.
Do you think the memory of those violent encounters, is defining to how they think about the world?
Yeah, because even in my lifetime there, in the 20 years I've spent in the Amazon, Ignacio was shot in the head. My friend Victor survived a violent encounter where they murdered somebody on a beach. I mean, they've shot numerous people. They've even shot people who were trying to help them, people who were trying to give them clothing and bananas. They've just, where they call it porcupining them, where they find a body on the beach with so many arrows that when they fall over, all the arrows are sticking up. And so they think, and they'll do it out of curiosity too, where it's like, "Hey, you're wearing a suit. That's weird. We've never seen anybody in a black and white suit." And then get a close.
Yeah.
The way Teddy Roosevelt would shoot a bird for science. They're like, they just want to look at you. And so they're operating on a different, they don't have a moral system that we have or understand. They're truly wild.
How does Ignacio think about them? Because they almost killed him.
Yes. It depends on the mood you get him in, because if you ask him, one day I asked him, I said, "If you could see the people that shot you in the head, what would you say to them?" And he looked at me with that Ignacio look. And he said, "I wouldn't say anything. I would kill as many of them as I could." I said, "Okay." He also had a time where he was in a really remote guard station working for the Ministry of Culture, and they showed up, and he knew that they were going to kill him. And so he climbed up into the peak of the little structure there. And just like, like a dog in a car, that greenhouse effect, in the top at midday with the sun beating down, he was huddled over a mattress while they were walking on the deck, moving pots and pans and looking at our items and artifacts. And he knew that if he was found, they'd kill him. But if he stayed up there, he was literally frying to death. He said he was soaking the mattress. He could feel himself dying for 2 hours. He had to stay there. And he was constantly making this decision of, if I come out, I die. If I stay here, I probably die. He's like, probably die is better than definitely die. So he was terrified. And so as they're screaming, "Mashko," and everybody's running and women are lifting children, Ignacio comes and finds me. And you can see in his eyes, you can see when somebody has that PTSD response where he's breathing heavy. He's moving behind trees. He's keeping me close to him, and he's going, "Look there. He has a bow. He has a bow." And we're looking up the beach, and there's just this clan of naked men walking down the beach with these 7-foot bows, and they're hunched over and they're pointing at us. They're going, "Look at that one." They're going, "Look, there's a gun there." And you can see them communicating to each other, and the butterflies are swirling off the beach. And, in these moments you go, am I entering a moment that I can't, is this a one-way door? Is this not something that, is this an irreversible situation? Because there's an unfolding situation where they're coming towards us. Are they going to attack? What do they want? Is there going to be I am soaked in chills right now just talking about it, because I remember standing there and going, there's no way this is real life. It's burned into my memory, them walking down the beach and seeing them with the bows. And of course, Stefan is up there just firing off pictures and Mosin is down getting video. And the community that we're with, people had, you hear shotgun shells loading home and them loading it. But they're getting ready. And there's this one guy, this anthropologist named Rommel, who has been the only person who has communicated with them peacefully. He did it in 2013 where he stood on the beach and he spoke to them. He knows enough of the local dialect that overlaps with theirs that he can speak to them. And so as they're coming down the beach, the butterflies are flying up and we're all waiting. And again, shotgun, you're talking, how many meters, 30, 40 meters, I don't know, accurate. For an arrow, you loose a 7-foot arrow that weighs nothing, you're talking about 300 meters easy. They can shoot you from across the river. So Ignacio was like pulling me and he was like, down. He's like, you go down. He's like, you stay behind this tree. And he's like, you watch them from there. He's like, watch out. That guy has an arrow. He's like, he was watching everyone because you could see, he's like, this is how it happens.
Did you think this might be the last day you have on this earth? Were you afraid?
I was, yeah, of course I was afraid. I'm with my two best friends and a bunch of people that I work very closely with, and you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no help coming and you're with 26 people and there's 50 of the tribe that you can see and that they're surrounding us. There's all men on the other side of the river. And then we had guns looking back towards the jungle because we knew we were being surrounded. And so again, this is always the story of someone's uncle, brother, cousin tells a story that happened and now it's happening. And it's not happening in the shadows. It's not happening in the middle of the night. It's happening in broad daylight. They're walking out onto the beach. It's like the first time they saw the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. You're going, there's no way.
And you are kind of walking on the knife's edge of, and it's funny you say Stefan was taking pictures because there's two ways to think of the situation. This is fascinating or this is extremely dangerous. And it's both. It is a nice edge.
Yeah.
So you could approach it one of the two ways. Yeah. Like if I die, I die. I'm going to take some good pictures.
But also we're there. That was also our mission, as the directors of Jungle Keepers, we're working with this community to ensure that their lifestyle can continue. And they're saying, hey, that's great. But as an indigenous community, we're dealing with these people that come out and raid our stuff, try and steal our women, that kill our hunters. And now they're coming out. We want you to see it. And so documenting it is part of our job. We have to show what happened that day. And so those guys were shooting. And then, yes, very seriously, it's actually, so Mosin's wife and I, we always joked about like, oh, if the tribe ever comes out, like you stand in front of him, like you take the arrow, he has kids. And it was, that day it was like we were strategically positioning ourselves, being like, you down, you cannot get killed. And it was, you start in those moments to go, okay, where will I be safe from arrows? Where can I run to the river if they come over? And you start planning, okay, if I jump into the river, I was going, okay, I got my bag, I have a can of tuna, I have a flashlight. I was like, if I jump into the river and float down and I live, I'm still days upriver. And so you start going through all these things,
and of course the Mashkapiro people are thinking exactly the same thing, probably.
Well, the interesting thing is that they're initiating the contact, right? They are the ones coming out of the jungle and confronting us.
And fundamentally, that contact is they're at least giving peace a chance. It's just they're trying the peaceful contact first, correct? Or is there a violent element? Like, what did you sense in the caution of them emerging to the beach?
Fear. As they came out, you could see fear on them because the way they were hunched over, the way they had their bows ready, they were worried. And so they came and, Rommel is standing there as closer than any of us at the edge on one side of the river. And it was like, shirts versus skins. It was two tribes looking at each other with 1,000 years of civilization between them. And Rommel's going, put down your bows. Put down your bows and we can talk. And he's, no mole, no mole. He kept saying no mole. He kept saying brothers, please put down your...
So no mole means brother in a language that they might be able to understand.
No mole means brother in a language that they do understand. And it seems like they refer to themselves as the Nomoles, the brothers.
So potentially that's what they call themselves as a tribe, is Nomoles.
Exactly. And actually the anthropologists that we've been speaking to post this event have been explaining to us that Mashkapiro, Piro is the group that they're from, these various nomadic tribes, and Mashko basically means like wild Piros. And so the one thing we know they call themselves is Nomoles.
So at the end of this, we might converge towards the name of this tribe being Namole versus Mashkapiro.
The Nomoles, yeah. Seems like the most current, or at least their self-appointed identity is the brothers, Nomole.
Anyway, there's these shredded warriors on the beach.
Yeah. With 7-foot arrows. And we're all standing there. And so the first thing, again, you just think of like, the peace pipe in the old stories. And the first thing is, let's make them an offering of peace. And so they got a canoe with no motor, and we piled it with plantains, like just full of plantains, 16 feet of endless green bananas. And then, the balls on this guy, the anthropologist, he gets into the river, takes the canoe, and it's the dry season, so the river is only about 3-4 feet deep at the channel. And so he walks this thing out. There's one man walking in the face of all these warriors, and he takes the boat and he pushes it towards them, and they rush out and they start grabbing the bananas. And they're not going, okay, we will unload these bananas and use them later. They're my bananas, and you're grabbing your bananas, and they're fighting and they're yelling and they're all grabbing and they're grabbing them, and then they push the boat back. And he talks to them a little bit, and again, it's not a perfect translation. So he's saying, "Where have you come from? What do you want? Who's your leader?" He's trying to establish these things, and they're saying things, and they all sort of talk at the same time, like a flock of birds. They don't have. It wasn't like one man speaks, and there was no women. The women were nowhere to be seen. And actually, at one point, as we were preparing, I think it was while we were preparing the second canoe of bananas, there was a moment of absolute panic, and it happened when there was a noise behind us, and you just hear a bunch of shotguns swing behind us, and Mosin goes down. I go running away from the river now because I want to see it coming if there's an attack coming, and I'm standing. Me and this guy, we're sharing a tree as cover, and he's got a shotgun, and he's looking back into the forest and peering through. And what was happening was the women of the tribe had come silent foot, and they were just pulling the yucca out of the ground and taking the banana plants and ruining the farm completely. But they were raiding the farm behind us while the men were talking up here. So again, were they peacefully contacting us, or were they like, hey, we need some food, so go make a diversion and take the food out the back?
You really were surrounded.
We were completely surrounded.
So they could have murdered all of you probably.
Easily. We were outnumbered 5-1 at the least.
Yeah. And it's probably fair to say that part of the reason they did, maybe they wanted peace, but part of the reason is they didn't know how deep this goes. They didn't know if you have backup.
They don't know if we have backup. They had questions. They were asking, some of their questions were incredible. How do we tell the difference between, how do we know who the good guys and the bad guys are? Because to them, all you outsiders are the same. So who are the ones cutting down the trees?
And those are the ones they know are the bad guys.
Well, the big trees seem to have incredible significance to them. They're significant to us in a different way, but to them, it's offensive on an almost religious level to cut a big tree as if you're killing their gods.
Mm-hmm. So there's a spirituality to the trees to them.
It seems like that.
And so whoever's cutting them down is a source of destruction on a spiritual, existential level.
Yeah. Well, why would you destroy our home? And I think they're right.
Yeah. In a deep sense, the uncontacted tribes represent the deep jungle. And so if they're threatened, that means the deep jungle is threatened.
Yeah. They are the human voice of the jungle, and they're asking questions. They're also demanding, they're clapping at us and they're waving and they're saying, send more bananas. And so they loaded up another boat and they pushed another boat out. And this time they gave them some rope. They all had rope tied around their waists, penises tied up. But they love rope. And some of them were wearing rope that they had made, which is brown or reddish. And then some of them were wearing rope that they had clearly pillaged from logging camps or the communities, because it was modern nylon paracord. And they had this wound around their waists like a thick belt. And they took the second boat, and they had some rope, and they had some plantains on there.
So some of these guys might have been the ones that murdered the loggers.
Could be.
From a couple of months before that.
Absolutely, could be. But what Rommel said as he was talking to them, he turned to us and he said, this group, he said, the other groups call me the grandfather. He said, this group, he said, I don't know any of these. He said, this is first contact. He said, this is the first time this group is talking to us. And you saw people from maybe 12 years old to what looks like 40 something, like a banged up 40, and no really old people and no women.
So this is a particular clan of the uncontacted tribe, and they've never contacted. Is there, just from your memory, interesting aspects about the way they were trying to communicate? Like you said, clapping. I think it's from an anthropology perspective, from a human perspective, fascinating. How do you talk to people from an uncontacted tribe like this? So clapping, yelling. It's interesting to know that there's not a hierarchy where there's a leader that represents, or is that we know for sure?
Before even coming to talk to you about this, we passed this through anthropologists and ethicists and people, and we said, look, can we talk about this? Because if you talk about this and you tell people there's these uncontacted tribes, people have misconceptions. They go, they're the last free people on earth. They're living the real life. We need to go join them. We want to see them. We want to photograph. There's all this bad stuff that happens, and all these people want us to be left alone. So the last thing we want to do is kill the thing we're trying to protect and tell the world. But at the same time, they're speaking out. They're saying, stop cutting our trees. Leave us alone. And so if we're not successful in the greater Jungle Keepers' mission of protecting this river, they cease to exist. And so advocating for these people requires us to have this conversation and requires us to have this footage and to show the world and then leave them alone. In order for any of this to make sense, I have to show you this footage.
And this has not been shown ever before.
This is a world first. I mean, up until now, that's the other thing, we're sitting there this day and the only thing you've ever seen are these blurry images from someone's cell phone from 100 meters away of the uncontacted tribes. And we're sitting there with, 800 millimeters with a 2x teleconverter and, R5s. And so this is, as we're looking through the farms, anticipating the tribe coming. I'll put a little bit of volume so you can hear it. And then you can see this is the moment. This is us running when they're out. They're coming down the beach. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, wow.
You see how many thousands of butterflies. But look at the way they move. Look at the way they point. Look at him with his bow.
Wow.
There it is.
They're trying to figure out what they're looking at.
And they didn't know what the cameras are there. So this was the guys looking out the back. So he's going, there's something back here. He could hear the women in the farm. And I'm looking in every direction because I'm going, which way is the arrow coming from? But see, he has his shotgun. This is just like a farm shotgun. Even if he shot it, you have to use a stick to bang out the shell. But see, as they come closer, they start laying down see, he's laying down his bow and arrow. They understand. No mole.
So these are warriors, and the way they were at first moving, it really looked like they're ready for violence. And now they're all standing in a relaxed.
Yeah.
And smiling? Are they smiling?
Smiles come at some point. I would say that one of these guys seemed like in a leadership position. He did most of the talking.
What's with the different hand gestures? The holding your hand up to the face. All of this means something.
All of this means something. Some had red smeared on their faces. Some had yellow.
Did you have a sense of hierarchy at all? Like the boss?
Again, there was just these two dominant guys, and like this guy and one other guy who looked almost like him, like his brother.
Yeah.
A lot of gesturing.
Wow. This is incredible, Paul.
Yeah. You see the rope.
Yeah.
Some of that rope is...
Yeah, I can kind of tell who the bosses are.
Right? All right, so a few of the... But see, even that, as he's pointing, we're going, what are you pointing at?
You guys are nuts. You guys are nuts. Oh.
You see as though they're rushing in, there's this desperation. They're hungry.
Is that in the water? Is that Rommel in the water?
In this particular video, it's a guy named Liner. But like, see these guys, they're fighting over it. It's not that we're all going to share it later. It's I get mine, you get yours. And so what does that mean?
Yeah. But here they're in peaceful mode.
Now, after we'd given them several boatloads of bananas, things did calm down. Rommel said to them, look, we've given you what we can give you. We gave you sugarcane. We gave you boatloads of plantains. And so then there came a time where things were a little more relaxed. They were walking around. At one point we had a great moment where we'd given them the plantains, we'd given them the bananas, and he'd said, look, that's it. He said, we've given you what you asked for. You asked for bananas. We don't cut the trees here. All of us here are not tree cutters. We're indigenous people, and he couldn't explain who the hell we were, but they were like, we don't cut the trees. We're not the loggers. And they're like, okay. So then at some point, Ignacio went out and started, he'd go like this and they'd go like this. And, he danced a little bit, they danced a little bit. And then there was this very human moment of just sort of joking.
So even Ignacio warmed up.
Once he realized it didn't seem like anyone was going to die that day, things did calm down. It was a false sense of security. Here, I'll show you. There's a couple more things that are relevant here, though. Yeah, this is just them interacting with the boat.
This is truly incredible, man.
But then they don't have boats. They don't have stone tools. They don't... Imagine if you showed them ice. They wouldn't...
This is historic.
You hear Percy Fawcett encountering the tribes. We've heard of anecdotal accounts of the tribes. This is the first time that the tribes have been filmed, that we can hear their voices, that there's a documented interaction happening. Now, look how comfortable he's getting. He's so close. They asked him for his shirt. He gave his shirt. They asked him for his pants. He gave his pants. He was in his underwear. Yep. You see the shirt that's over his shoulder. Ignacio took off his Jungle Keeper shirt and threw it to the anthropologist, and then the anthropologist walked it off and threw it to them. So over the shoulder of that uncontacted naked warrior is a Jungle Keeper shirt with the logo showing. So they're like their second shirt.
And you just upgraded that guy's status in the tribe. He's gonna be the new boss with that shirt.
He's got a dope ass polo. Yeah. He didn't even have to order it. But yeah, this is in the aftermath when things were calm. And then my sort of moment with this that really stuck with me was when Rommel said to me, he said, they're asking about you. And I said, what are they asking? I said, me? And he goes, yeah, they're asking about you. And, again, I'm not tall, but compared to the people in the village, I was a little bit taller and big shoulders. And they said, you look like a warrior. He said, could you come forward? He said, show them that you don't mean any harm. He said, show them your palms. And so he pulled me up onto the beach. And this was right before they left. But see, I hold up my hands, listen. And they sang back. Cantando. They're singing. They raise their hands, I raise my hands.
Wow.
And then we were left with watching them walk off the beach into the jungle with everything that we'd given them. And they were gone. And so we went downriver the next day, and the community said to us, okay, now you understand this is real. This is terrifying. You felt that fear. You have a duty, if you're going to protect this river, to protect us from them and to help us figure out what future they want. If they want to come to us, if they want to learn farming, whatever it is, that's fine. But they were like, we need protection from you guys. And then in this video in the beginning, I'm sort of narrating to the camera and walking around right as they're coming up the beach. But you see this guy right there in the blue shirt.
Mm-hmm.
That's George. And he was very friendly, very confident with this. He said, don't be scared. They're not going to hurt us. And the next day we went back to town, long journey back to town. And go to sleep. We wake up in the morning and we find out that the following early morning, our friends in the community had said, okay, the tribe is gone. We gave them all the things they wanted. We gave them sugarcane, bananas. We said, please come back. You're welcome here anytime. And George was driving a boat and there was people on the boat. And as they were going upriver, the tribe, 200 of the tribe ran out, surrounded the boat, and they started firing arrows, and everybody else could hit the deck and get under the benches and hide behind bags of rice. George was driving and he was leaning back as he's driving. He's driving as fast as he can, and one arrow came in just above his scapula and came out by his belly button. And so he had that 7-foot arrow tip through him. And so they pulled him out. And I saw the boat afterward, and there's just, horrific amounts of blood all over the boat. And he had to be medevaced out, and somehow he lived. And we were able to help getting him a helicopter, getting him evac'd, all this. But again, you just go, these people came out of the jungle and they asked for bananas. We gave them bananas, and we, in every way possible, said we mean peace. We want friendship with you. And then the next day, they attacked.
What do you think happened? Why do you think their mind turned? Or maybe this has to do with the role of violence in their society. Maybe it's so integrated into how they interact with the world that they don't even see that as a fundamental shift in the interaction.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. And the only thing I can think is that the way they hid the women from us, you don't know, for them, maybe we're not allowed to see their women, or because the one thing that we got was that as George's boat and this other boat were going upriver, which is how they live. It's not like they were doing anything wrong. These people live in a community days into the Amazon. They were going fishing. And so they came around a bend, and I think they spooked the tribe. The tribe might have just acted defensively and said, we don't know who this is. The motors could have set them off. We don't know. They shot him. And then the other thing is the thing with the necklace. I've asked anthropologists about this, and their answer was that at this point, they said, you know more than we do. But that.
Yeah.
Because 2 of them had the exact same item around their necks. And it seems to be a Brazil nut and then some sort of casing around the side. And it looked like animal teeth positioned in there. And it's like, what are you carrying? Are you carrying medicine? Are you carrying some sort of a totem? But both of them, and it's not a comfortable thing to wear around your neck, a grapefruit sized bigger.
Do you have a sense that that's a container, or is it just like a totem?
It seems like a container. They didn't let it get wet. They cared for it. The guy in this picture, so he's got this is a piece of tree fiber that he has it on, and then he's gotten his hands on Brazil nut sacks, plastic sacks from one of the farms across the river. And so they take, and one of them got a machete, and he was walking as they were leaving. Again, during that period where it got friendly, he was leaving and he had the machete and he was playing with the machete and like swinging it at butterflies. And one of my friends, this guy Bacho, he goes, deja mi machete. He was like, drop the machete. And the guy just looked at him and was like, yeah, come and get it. I was like, yeah, you cross the river and see what happens.
Do you think he figured out, or they later figured out how to use a machete?
Oh, they know machete.
They understand machete.
Yeah. They do raids for machetes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They understand the power of a sharpened metal.
It's a Excalibur sword to them, But yeah, that one has stuck with me because I go, what were they carrying in there?
So what are some of the questions? Like, if you can know everything you'd want to know about them. So maybe in the space of communication and language, that's really interesting. You mentioned that there's all kinds of calls, animal calls. So they obviously know how to fake animal calls.
Yeah, they can use animal calls with enough complexity that they can do basic commands. So they can speak in Capuchin. They use Tinamu calls. Some of our rangers were upriver a few months ago. This is long after this. This is recently. Just recently, they were upriver and they found a trail, let's say Nomole Trail, a Mashkapiro Trail, and it was Ignacio, of course. And he made there's like a secret whistle they do, this mouth, and he whistled out into the jungle, and he was listening, and they whistled back, And so him and everybody on the team just ran back to the boat and got out of there. But it was like, at least they answered. They didn't just shoot. He whistled, they whistled, and they said, out. And he got out. But it's like, we don't know, where are the old people? Do they not survive? What are the marriage rituals? How is reproduction handled? There's one or two children in the Amazon that I know of who have, washed down river on a log and been rescued by communities and then raised, and they either learn the native dialect or Spanish. And then, of course, at some point, somebody will go and say, what was it like when you lived with them? And the answer is always the same. I forget. They don't talk about it.
So maybe we know that they value secrecy. I mean, when you're afraid of the outside world, you don't. Part of that is confidentiality. They all sign NDAs.
There's some really good NDAs.
It's understood. It's an NDA. You can't. There's no lawyers. There's only one way to execute the law.
Yeah, it's either a really strong NDA or that it is savage. That they're living out there in the jungle and that you're eating monkeys and turtles and you're hungry for days on end. And, your wife might get stolen by another tribe. Your baby might get stolen. Imagine the bot flies and the things that they must put up with. It's just, what we experienced in 3 days of living out with modern camping gear and headlamps and a sense of direction. And they're doing none of that. You could put us out there naked. A very different story. So
yeah, the brutality of nature.
Yeah.
Werner Herzog comes to mind. That they have to live in that.
Yeah.
But there's something about the jungle that serves as a catalyst for spirituality. So they must also have a religious component, a spiritual component that probably unifies them. There must be an ideology they operate under.
There must be, and there's many things they must have. They must have a belief system. They probably have amazing origin stories. It would be amazing to know what things they have accurately and inaccurately guessed about us, about the outside world. I mean, they've never heard of the country they live in, or of World War II or any of it. And so seeing them come across the beach was surreal because it's like this aperture into history.
By the way, I mean, you do have a certain look. So you realize, them singing to you, your face is carved in some wood somewhere. And there's a few of them gathering around and still singing about the great gringo, with
full beard and the big nose. They probably drew this, he's got hair all over his face and a huge nose, and they tell their children.
And it could be anything. You could be to the children, they say, this is the monster you should be afraid of, or this could be the most beautiful encapsulation of the outside world, and it could be everything in between. You don't get to control the myths.
You don't get to control the myths. God only knows, but I mean, it's
so interesting.
So now in that 130,000 acres that we have, we know, and this is what we sort of have to come out of the closet with this. We are now protecting these people, and the only way to do that is to make sure that they're not contacted, let alone that they don't get machine guns shot at them by the narcos, or that crazy, hippie gringos don't go down there thinking they're gonna, join the coolest commune on earth.
So how much of the land that they move about is within the 130,000 acres of rainforest you've been able to save, and how much of it is not? How much of it is in the extra 200,000 acres that you're trying to save?
Most of that 200,000 that we're still trying to protect is territory that is theirs. And in order, people always ask me, they're like, first, a lot of people ask, how could you buy the Amazon? They're like, that doesn't make sense. And it's like, well, bad news for you. Somebody already owns it, and we have to buy it from them so that they don't log it. And so these landowners are going to sell their forest to the logging companies, because owning 10,000 acres of the Amazon doesn't help you if you're a third generation jungle man. And now it's just something that's up there and you live in the city. And so they're going to contract either the narcos or the loggers or the miners to go out there and use it, and they'll get a little money. And those people, when they see these people, will kill them. That's for sure. And shotguns and machine guns in the end will win, not to mention the germs.
So all the money you're trying to raise and all the land that you're trying to save, it's all towards that. protecting the deep jungle. So when you buy up the jungle, you just want to let it be, let the natural ecosystem come back to life in the cases when it was logged, or just flourish if it hasn't.
Again, we're talking about the last great jungle. I always called it the last endless forest because this place is so incredibly remote. And then the other question I always get is people say, well, why is this river so important? And for my whole career, my whole time, 20 years in the Amazon, it's been that it's massively intact forest. Places like the ancient forest where the trees have never been cut. So it's forest that's been growing since the dawn of time, and thousands of species can be on a single Shiwawako tree, and it's avatar on earth. It's you can see the sweat come off your skin and rain down and then drink it out of the river, and you're part of the chemical physical reality there. And so it's one of the last places that's untouched. This changed everything because we realized that along with the butterflies and the monkeys and the jaguars and the trees and the ecosystem, there's also a human culture that will, in the next few years, cease to exist, that will be exterminated if we don't protect them. And when you look back at what happened to indigenous cultures all over the world over the past few centuries, that they've been wiped out, we collectively now, because we know this, have a chance to undo all of the injustices that happened in the past by at least doing one right, by saying these people want one thing, to just be left alone. Imagine if we just protected the river. And then it's not that they're this thing that's vanishing from reality, but they get to continue living that way. And then if they want to come out and contact us, great. And if they want to continue living like this for the next 10,000 years, they can. And that's what we're working with now. It's become so much more important than just, we're trying to protect the environment. It's like, no, we're trying to protect, things like Yellowstone and Yosemite and the sequoias that occur nowhere else on Earth. You protect the things that are unique and special, the crown jewels, and in both a biological way and as well as a anthropocentric way. This has now become a river with global historic significance because this story is going to play out in the next 18 months.